Welcome to WrenchWay Schools Week. This roundtable is focused on recruiting and supporting new instructors, and something that I honestly didn't know was a huge issue. I always knew it was kind of an issue, but didn't really know the extent of it. And so what we wanted to do was bring a panel of experts on to talk about this, people that are boots on the ground, that see this every day, and really get their perspectives on it and be able to understand this in a little bit more detail. So joining me today are Tracy Hicks, Dan Klecker, Laura Garcia, and Brian Hawn. And I'm going to let each of you kind of do a brief introduction of yourself, if you don't mind. And Dan, I'll start with you.
All right. Thank you for the invite. I work with the foundation of the Wisconsin Auto and Truck Dealer Association as their state education director. And I also represent the ASE Education Foundation in Wisconsin. I've been doing this for 8 years now. I'm a retired high school automotive instructor, of which the program now has a tremendous instructor doing way more than I ever did. So I'm glad that it's been passed down and in good hands.
That's a pretty good segue, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah, that's a tough one to live up to. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I appreciate it, Dan. My name is Brian Hawn. I'm a relatively new autos instructor in a place called McFarland, Wisconsin. That's where Dan used to teach, and I was able to take over the program. Very blessed, very grateful to have this job. I came from industry. Most recently was running fleet maintenance on a fleet of delivery vehicles. And now came from the industry and get to share my experience with kids who are just hungry and eager to learn.
Well, and both you and Tracy had both done videos with Kristen Battaglia, who at the time was on our team, and they were great videos. The energy that both of you brought is just so refreshing and so great, and I really appreciate that. Laura, if you don't mind, I'll probably swing over to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on this. This is great. This is the first, I guess, panel I've been on. So I'm an automotive instructor at Northern Virginia Community College, which is right outside of DC in Alexandria. And I also started in the industry, started out taking classes in high school, and that was, became my passion. And then I went on to the Ford ASEP program. And so got into a dealer, worked in the field for a number of years, and eventually cycled my way back to the community college I graduated from, so teaching in the same room that I took classes in, which is always really cool. And now I'm also running the program, so doing a little bit of teaching. GM ASEP, what we call the global program. We have some dealer-specific programs as well, and our catch-all global program. So.
We're seeing a little bit of a trend here, right? It started off in the program, came back. I think when we talk about the importance of getting young people into the industry, this is exactly what we're talking about. That it comes full circle, and that's what makes the industry great. And speaking of making the industry great, my friend Tracy Hicks. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Jay.
Good. So let's hear about you a little bit.
My name's Tracy Hicks. I'm a high school automotive instructor in Frederick, Maryland, which is just a short drive up from Laura in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC and Baltimore, at the Frederick County Career and Technology Center. I've been here for, this is my 6th year, and I had the pleasure, I actually teach at the school that I went to high school automotive program through. So when I graduated, I went to UTI, and then got accepted to the BMW STEP program, worked at BMW, became master certified, and then kind of traveled through the industry, different brands and independent shops, and kind of gained experience, all while staying connected to the program here through an advisory council. And when one of the instructors retired, I decided to step in and keep the program moving forward and growing and evolving. So I started in 2016, and I'm still here chugging away.
Well, we love it. I think having really strong mentors and teachers as young people, right? That has such an impact. And that's something that I think we're seeing the struggle with, right? Is getting some new people into this. And I actually was fortunate enough to have Sarah from our marketing team pull up a stat for me, and it says that approximately 17,500 openings for career and technical education teachers are projected each year on average over the next decade. Most of those openings are expected to result from the need to replace workers who transfer to different occupations or exit the labor force, such as to retire. That's a pretty big number, and that was one that kind of blew me away. And I first off want to ask, is it a surprise to any of you hearing that stat?
Yeah, definitely. Because I always, one of the reasons I took my position in 2016 here was because there was an instructor who had been here for 15 plus years retiring. And I wasn't sure when the next opportunity to make that move would be. If they hired someone young, they could be there for 20, 30 years, and you just don't get that opportunity here in your hometown where you grew up to do that. So it was probably a little bit earlier than I thought I was ready to, but I took a leap of faith, so to say. And most of the people I work with here in the school and other trades and stuff have been here for a long time. There's not a lot of turnover here, so that was a surprise to me to hear that.
What about you, Laura?
I can't say it's been as much of a surprise for me. In Fairfax County, which is our main county that we're sitting in, there's about 13 automotive high schools, and we've had quite a few people retire lately. So we're sort of at that threshold where people have been, holding these positions for a really, really long time, and now they're all sort of leaving. At the same time. Sorry, dogs.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
We love them anyway.
Yes.
And so now it's sort of difficult to find someone who's really multifaceted enough to take over as a teacher. Like, it's a different thing teaching than just fixing cars. And to find someone who really fits that mold is very difficult.
I agree. And Brian, I'm curious as to how your skills in a shop transitioned into a school. And I could tell in your interview with Kristen, you bring a lot of energy. So I'm guessing you put a lot of energy into the job, but I'm guessing it takes some different skills than maybe what you had thought.
Oh, without a doubt. And I guess I'm guilty as charged with the energy portion. I'm not a very big man whatsoever, but I just kind of bounce across the walls, and I think the kids like it, so it's all good. But yeah, it's a strange transition, right? Going from a shop into a classroom now, where you've got all these eyes kind of glued on you, and you're center stage. I actually kind of came to found my passion through coaching football. I found out that I love to teach, and I'm very energetic, and kids respond to me, and I respond to kids in a decent way through the coaching realm. So when I got the opportunity to jump into this with both feet and kind of meld my two passions together, which ended up being teaching kids and fast cars, essentially, I went in with both feet. But the number, to be honest with you, Jay, doesn't really surprise me at all. In our specific area, we tend to see and hear of a lot of openings, especially within the autos realm. For whatever reason, people taking different jobs, people retiring, or, people just in a pandemic / post-pandemic world, people just taking other maybe possible more fruitful opportunities. So the number doesn't really surprise me, unfortunately, because I think if people really gave it a shot and kind of open their mind to it, they could see what a spoiled, rotten life we have here, right? What a great gig this really is. So hopefully we can find ways to really encourage, techs or trainers or some of those people to possibly just take a look at some of this.
Dan, do you think it's reflective of the technician community as a whole? I know there's a lot of concern of, the technician population aging, right? I think as boomers start to retire, you're starting to see maybe a lot of generational technicians, people that have been in it for multiple generations, leave via retirement. Do you think that's kind of where we're getting the impact? Or, on that stat, it talked about how retirement was one of the major issues. Is that something that you've seen over the course of your time, both on as an instructor and then as you've evolved to where you're at now? Oh, we might have there you go. There's your audio.
I think that's true. I think with almost any career, you can say that with the boomer retirement certainly is impacting every field. But in the technical areas, especially, there certainly is that correlation. Right now, when we have a high school teacher leave, it's like musical chairs. It's who's going to move to take that job, and it's then who doesn't have a teacher at the end, and then they're the ones trying to find somebody to fill a position. But everybody's always kind of moving. They get a raise, they get maybe a better position or a better facilities. Everybody's trying to do that. So it gets bounced around a lot.
Do you see instructors going back to shops at all?
Yeah, I actually just got an email from a dean at one of our technical colleges asking me for help because she lost an automotive and a diesel instructor mid-year. And the reason was they went back not just to what they were doing, but they got tremendous opportunities as training managers for big firms. Something they could not turn down, so they had to just leave at that point. But it really leaves the college in a lurch. And they have 2 more people retiring at the end of the school year. So yes, that's, those positions you're looking for techs who maybe are getting up there and maybe don't want the physical nature of being a tech and want to wind down a little bit. But, it's hard as working with a dealer association to recommend any techs leave their dealers, so it's because they can't afford to lose them.
Well, and that's the interesting position we're in, right? That interesting spot where you're trying not to upset the network of shops that are out there that are supporting your program and helping you out by taking one of their techs. But one opportunity that I see out there is maybe some of that aging technician workforce that is maybe, they don't want to get as beat up in the shop as they have been over the course of the 20 years in the shop. And Tracy, I'm curious as to whether you see that as an opportunity to bring more instructors in where you've got those veteran level technicians that might want to start to spread the knowledge of what they've learned over the course of their career.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Jay, because that almost sings to my situation where I stayed, relevant in the program, from a Skills USA and an ASC and a PAC, a professional advisory council position. And I wanted to help students kind of prepare themselves more so there wasn't such a skills gap when they left the automotive program. And I wanted to minimize the time they struggled before they become self-sufficient and work towards flat rate and could really start to, earn a good amount of money where they could sustain themselves on and be, self-dependent. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you definitely can take advantage of that, at that angle and guys that, if you come to the school system, you're going to have better benefits. You're going to be better taken care of. You've got all this experience and all this knowledge, and you don't want to let that just kind of go away. You'd be able to put that to good use and pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah, I think that you find those technicians that are special that way, right? That really want to extend their knowledge to the next generation. And that's really who you're trying to hone in on, right? Are those folks that really have a passion for coaching. And Brian, I mean, you used your example of coaching in football and how that translated over. I'm curious, and Brian, I'll start with you on this one, is what is something you would look for, or maybe there's that technician that's out there looking at becoming an instructor. What are the traits that a good teacher has that's transitioning from industry? Who is it that might be in that dealership or in that independent shop or in that fleet that their skills would translate nicely into this role?
Hey, that's a great question. If I could be frank with you all, it's rarely the most knowledgeable one. I'll be the first one to say, content-wise, I I wasn't the most knowledgeable even in my own shop where I was the director of fleet maintenance, so I came in with like an MLR level, like a maintenance light repair. I wasn't certified in drivability or anything like that. Really, I mean, brakes, tires, get really good at oil changes and some of this maintenance stuff. But what you're looking for is just kind of like that passion, that drive, that ability to relate. The ability to communicate is absolutely massive. We see that with techs all the time, right? You're filling out repair orders and stuff, and you see one that just says, hey, I fixed this. Well, what did you actually do? That sort of stuff. So the ability to communicate, but it all really just boils down to, as Tracy was saying, and he said it so perfectly, just straight up, do you have a passion for that next generation? Do you have a passion for helping kids? Do you have a passion for helping students, college students, whatever that might be? If you've got that passion, you're already a prime candidate. That you can learn, and they'll teach you anything you need to know on this job. The one thing you can't teach is passion. If you got a passion for it, you're going to be tremendously successful. You're going to wake up every Wednesday morning on a random Wednesday and be just jacked to go to work. It's unbelievable. On the flip side, if you don't got that passion, I could imagine that this is going to be a pretty rough gig.
So Laura, what was the roughest part of the transition for you? Like going from a shop to in the classroom, like what was it that you struggled with the most at first?
I gotta be honest, being politically correct was a little bit of a challenge.
That's a little different than a shop, right?
Right. Going into a community college setting where you're sort of expected to work with a lot of higher ups, deans and provosts, and even college-wide at the president level, and building curriculum and some of these things, understanding what's okay to say and what's not okay to say. That was probably my toughest challenge. But as long as I was in the classroom, I was safe. So
the classroom part was the easy part. Yeah,
exactly. Anything dealing with the students was fine. There's no issues there. But yeah, working with administration, it is a different culture. So you're sort of like, you have a foot in two worlds. So you have a foot in the automotive world, and then you have a foot in this more professional white collar sort of world, and that can be a little bit challenging at times, but overall you do grow a lot as a person, and your skill sets that you have, you continue to build your technical skill set, because I'm doing training all the time. Especially if you get in the community college level, like there's stuff coming out that's new, and you got to know it, and you need to teach it right now. You can't delay. But you're also gaining a professional skill set. So I totally get it when Dan says, yeah, there were 2 instructors who got some amazing job opportunities that they couldn't pass up, because now you've got, you're just worth your weight in gold at that point. So yeah, I guess your professional skill set, that would be my answer.
It's interesting to me though, because that's not something that I would have thought, right? When I kind of take a step back and look at it, it is a completely different environment and different people that you're working with. And Laura, I'm going to stick with you on this. When you look at it in the prep or the pressure to make sure that you're on top of everything because you're the one relaying this information, is that a little different too? Because in the past, you're reliant on that information to make sure you get your job done. Now you're reliant, or there's people relying on you to teach them accurate, good information, right?
Yes. So it is very good to be a humble person, because there's going to be questions your students ask you, and you're like, I never even thought about that. Like, okay, hold on, let me think. Okay, no, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry, I'll get back to you next week. I'm going to call some people I know. I'm going to give Tracy and Brian a call. Maybe they know something, and I'll let you know. So yeah, it's just, it's a transition, but I think overall it's a really good one.
Tracy, do you run into that a similar, I guess, problem there, or I wouldn't even call it a problem. I think it's a unique I don't know. It's unique to look at it and say, okay, I don't know this. I need to learn more about it.
Yeah, and Laura hit the nail right on the head with having to work with admin and understand the educational side of the system, but still maintain the automotive, prepare the student for the automotive shop. Because if they walk out of the classroom expecting a classroom environment in a high-speed automotive shop, they're going to have a rude awakening and they're not going to be prepared. So you got to kind of get them ready for that environment while still maintaining an appropriate environment in the school. So that's definitely important. The thing that, I think caught me most off guard was the things that some of these students have to deal with at home. You're only really familiar with your situation that you grew up in and maybe a close friend or something. But there's so many issues and things going on for a lot of these kids that come into these programs that they're looking for a way out of that situation, a way to, get out of that situation and just be a good, live a good life or just live an okay life. So man, it's really, it really kind of reassures you that you're trying to make, these guys and girls' lives better when you see some of the stuff they have to deal with at home, and the school, your automotive shop almost becomes a once a day vacation for them to get away from the problems and the chaos that they live in on a daily basis. That was something I really wasn't expecting, to see, because it's just kind of, it's tough. And all you can do is just focus on making it better day in and day out for those kind of kids that have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Well, talk about impact though, right? Like if you're that person's getaway from something that might not be very great in their life, that speaks volumes to all of you that are on this call and wanting to make their lives better and have truly their best interest in mind. And that's the hard part, I think, is knowing that there's an emotional aspect to this as well, right? It's not just go fix the car, go fix the truck, go, whatever. It is, you're impacting somebody's life. And Dan, I'm going to actually go to you on this one, because you've impacted a lot of lives over the course of your career. And I want you to talk to me about that piece. Like how important was that to you over the course of your career, and how much, when you look back, is that something that you're just extremely proud of? You have to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a career educator. I was not ever a technician. I was a technical educator and then landed at McFarland and started doing automotive. And it was a hobby shop. And so I had to learn the technical aspect to raise the level of my program. And so that was my journey in there. But oh yes, looking over the years, I mean, I go to advisory board meetings now for colleges and run into former students who have their own shops that they run sitting across the table from me and things like that. It's like, wow, that's, it doesn't get better than that.
No, it really doesn't. And having one of yours right below you here, Brian, I mean, that was, tell me the impact that Dan had on your life. I mean, there had to have been a reason that you're there today, and that was drawn back to Dan.
Absolutely. Dan is outstanding. I can count on one hand the number of people in my life that guided me to this position, and Dan is certainly one of them. Just unbelievable impact on me, continues to. Like, that's the coolest thing about this is, Dan's not, and most of us, I mean, I've met Tracy for 15 minutes and Laura for 15 minutes, and I feel like they're kind of the same way too. You kind of get that aura about somebody where, like, it's not just a one-time impact with these people. It's not like I met Dan one time and then we're off and, hey, good luck to you. He consistently checks in. Hey, how's the program doing? Stop by. I mean, it's incredible. And then, as he was alluding to it, and Tracy as well, when you get that one kid, right? You get like one a year, maybe two, if you're lucky, who just doesn't think they're good at anything and everything sucks. And everything is just miserable in their life. And they pick up an impact and they're like, hey, I'm kind of good at this. And as a sophomore, maybe, let's say, and pretty soon as a senior, they're in youth apprenticeship. And then, a couple of years down the road, you see them and, you're 2 years away from master tech and they're loving life. Like, there's nothing more rewarding, as you all said, than that. And it reminds you, it humbles you real quick. Like Laura said, it also reminds you exactly why you're here. And it's an unbelievable feeling.
One, that's really cool. I know I had instructors growing up that were really impactful to me that I'm still in touch with to this day, right? That talked to me about my business and I just think it's really cool that they care still, right? That they even care that I'm out here doing this thing and that they are willing to reach out. And, I think that's one thing that I always thought about in my own dealings was the impact of an instructor can oftentimes be traced by how many students they're still in touch with after the fact, right? Like how many people do they still talk to and how many people they still have relationships with, because that really, I think, gets to the core of how you're impacting those people. What I want to shift to here, because I think that is the most clear benefit of being an instructor, because you have to want to impact people in order to be in that. But I want to talk about some of the other benefits and really what you like about being an instructor, right? And I think there's probably a wide variety of things that we could talk about, but for me, that's kind of an outsider. I've never been an instructor. I've obviously sat through a lot of classes, but never been in that seat. Tracy, I'll start with you on this. Walk me through what it is that makes you love that, and impact aside, because we know the impact that you guys are having out there right now, but really, what are some of the tangible things that really make it worth it for you?
I think the thing that right now that I like the most, other than working with the students and the shops and stuff, is, when you're a technician, you're a lifelong learner. So, one of the most important things you can do when you become an instructor is continue to learn. Our industry, especially right now, is changing so fast. It's really hard for, even a full-time technician to keep up with all the technology and terminology and tools. So that's something that I've really bought into with my program, is making sure that we keep up to the best of our budget's ability with technology and training and how the industry's moving. Because I like learning, and I like learning and staying on the front side of all the technology and the changes in the industry. And so the students get to see that, through me, and how, the industry changes, and how I'm learning some stuff as it comes out, and we see stuff in the news and new vehicles and manufacturers come out, and they get exposed to that. And it might not even click for them right now while they're in the program in high school, but it might click in 6 months, it might click in 6 years, and they'll look back and they'll remember that. And I'm hoping that I'm instilling that want and that drive to be a learner for, the rest of their years, and keep that passion and that focus on learning, because it's going to make them such better, employees, better technicians, just better people in general.
I think that's a pretty cool thing. That's a really awesome benefit. Laura, what about schedule? What was the change in schedule from when you're in a shop to when you're in a classroom?
Yeah, going from working 50 plus hours a week, normally 60 is kind of, normal, especially when you're just starting out. You're a little slow, you got to stay a little later to get things done. And yeah, the schedule is definitely great now as a community college instructor, for sure, because you are able to do a lot of prep work at home, before actually going in. So normally, I go in, like, generally speaking, 4 days a week. And I try to stay at home for 1 day a week, just to have some actual focus time to make sure I've got everything in order and I'm keeping up with, responding to students and talking to industry leaders and making sure everything else that goes on.
Yeah,
the juggling act. Because unfortunately, if you do just work 5 days a week straight, and high school instructors out there, you guys are angels, complete angels, because I know you have to run your program, teach it 24/7, and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, definitely having a more flexible schedule helps a lot to make sure that we are doing our very best and meeting everyone's demands and needs.
Brian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just one note on schedule. It's summer's off, yo. I mean, how can you like, I'm a super avid fisherman. I love football. I love spending time with my family. So I get all of that sort of time where you kind of step away from the classroom. But I'm kind of one of those suckers. You know, I don't have to be here during the summer. And I'm here 3 days a week with something else going on, you know, whether I'm just kind of using the shop or I'm prepping for something or whatever that is. And then we have, Dan helps us out with an unbelievable thing called Summer Institute, where we as autos instructors in the state of Wisconsin, you know, get together and continue our learning, like Tracy was saying. So schedule wise, my schedule has been very relieved as far as structure, you know, from where I went to the shop to where I am now. I'll tell you right now, I'm busier than I ever have been, but that's my choice. You know, I'm busier by choice, and busy by choice is awesome. Busy by force is tough. You know, but I get to be involved in so many different facets of the high school now. I get to work high school basketball games. I'll go supervise the student section and, you know, be with the kids and stuff like that. So schedule wise, yeah, my hours went up, but it's by choice. I love it. You know, I love it. I get to bring my family's very involved with this too. It's outstanding.
That is cool. That is cool. Dan, one thing I want to maybe ask you about is qualifications of a new instructor, right? So say you've got that person that is interested in it and maybe just doesn't think they have the qualifications or doesn't think that they have the pedigree to be able to translate into a classroom. What do you see with that in terms of what is needed for somebody to be an instructor, whether at the secondary or post-secondary level?
Yeah, as a career educator, when Wisconsin opened up and allowed technicians to come in and teach, I must say I struggled with that concept because they weren't teachers. What are they doing here? But now I can say that some of my best automotive teachers in the state are techs who came in, and I've seen some come in and crash and burn, where this just was not going to work. And I think I've kind of discovered the requirement is such as Brian was coaching kids. Right there, he knew these kids already, so that was an easy one. We got another instructor who we never coached, but he was a mentor to high school students in his shop for years. Every year he had somebody new, so he was doing this already, so he knew what he was getting into. So it's the instructors who have no experience with youth, or technicians with no experience with youth whatsoever, to step into it. That's a really big hurdle for them to make.
Yeah, and Laura, I'm curious in Virginia if it's similar credentials, or that's something I am really unfamiliar with and trying to learn a little bit more about. Is it state level? Is it state level mandated qualifications? You have to be this or have this background in order to get in?
Right, that's a great question. So generally speaking, at the high school level, as long as you have a high school diploma and you have a certain number of ASE certifications and a certain amount of technical experience, so usually I think they want somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 hours of technical experience full time, then yeah, you can be a high school instructor, and definitely you're looking for mentors more so than the technical experience. Some of your best techs who are going to be great teachers, they're maybe not the best technicians, like Brian was saying. They're really maybe a little bit slower, a little more methodical. Maybe they don't mind talking to the customers a little more often, or they're always helping out their colleagues. These types of people who are leaders really in their own way, not necessarily just looking at how many hours can I make in the day. For us at the community college level, which I think is pretty similar for most community colleges in the country, we require an associate's degree in automotive just because, well, that's the degree we're awarding, so you kind of have to have that. But sometimes there's ways where they say, well, as long as you get it done within a year or two, we can let you in now, depending on the need. So don't let your education level necessarily hold you back. If you know that you've got the stuff, definitely apply. go for it, see what you can do.
A lot of what you just explained, as far as characteristics of a good instructor, are similar to what a good manager is too, right? And that's what we always talk about with almost like that Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky effect, where they were a good tech is so good that they don't understand why somebody else can't do what they do. And so it's hard for them to coach those people up because they were so good at what they did. And so I see a lot of translation there, and that's what I give a lot of shops advice on, is that piece right there when they're looking at a manager. It's interesting that you say the same thing in regard to an instructor, and I could see that all day long. You have to want to have that like helping heart, somebody that wants to really translate their skills and isn't just, you know, flat rate driven, where you're going into a shop and you're trying to punch out as much work as you possibly can and making a good living doing that. It is truly slowing down. And I look back to my experience, and I had a technician that worked for me that would have been insanely, just such a good instructor, because he didn't care what he got paid. He did not care about anything other than helping everybody else and making sure that the work that he did was top notch, great quality, and was just always a pleasure to talk to. And I think that's really what a good instructor looks like. And Tracy, I'm curious if you've got anything to add there. I mean, I think that they hit on some really good points there.
Yeah, absolutely. The mentoring aspect, you know, looking at your ASE apprenticeship mentors, how they work with the kids. But also I'll add that a couple of caveats, that they're familiar with your program and your process already. If they're working with your students, they know your program. They should know your curriculum. They should know what you're working with, and what you're trying to accomplish in your specific program. So being familiar with your program, assisting like I did with skills contests or volunteering, just coming in and talking to the students, you know, who comes into your classroom and presents. You get, you know, they may only visit for a half hour or an hour, but you get a really good look at how they're going to interact with students, how they can hold the room, how they can keep their attention, and how they're going to, you know, conduct themselves. Really, really important, because, you know, one of the things I think is really important about what we do is you got to get the students to love the industry and the what you want them to do before you train them how to do it. You need them to have a passion for it before you try to, you know, shove the knowledge and stuff into their face and try to drive home all the fundamentals. You want them to get an interest in it and a passion and start to love it. And then that'll just kind of grow on its own. You're just basically then fanning the fire, and getting them to really start to take off. So you can see that pretty easily with some time in front of students. But, you know, mentorship's a really good idea. You're anybody on your advisory council, you know, because you can kind of see how they have input into the program and how they're going to steer it and help it evolve and grow. You just really want somebody that's going to come in and make the program and the students better than they were the day before.
I love that. I love how you just summarized that. That is really, really good stuff. One topic that is always, I think, when I look at, you know, other jobs, or if you were to look at other industries, I'm always curious about stress and the stress level as a technician as compared to being an instructor or a teacher, right? And Brian, being that you've come from that fleet maintenance side, talk to me a little bit about the difference in stress. Is there a high level of difference in the stress? And then is it just different? Is it just different stress altogether?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, there's not a raised or lower level of stress per se. To me, it's just a different stress. And it's one that nothing can truly prepare you for it until you get into it, you know? But it's as we kind of touched on a little bit before, and like Tracy was saying, it can be an emotional stress. You know what I mean? You're going to see and learn things about kids that are going to just straight up break your heart. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, it's the stress and the thought process of any good instructor. You know, am I doing everything I can? Am I meeting the kid halfway? You know, how can I be better? How can I better reach these kids? These are the thoughts that are going to go home with you at night, right? So the thoughts that used to go home with me were, how am I ever going to get a U-joint here on time for this truck to be on the road tomorrow? And now that whole thought process is, you know, is this kid going to have enough food to eat tonight? You know, what can I do? Where can, you know what I mean? So thankfully, I'm blessed with an administrative team here at McFarland that truly cares about us as teachers and making sure we have all the tools and necessary equipment to manage that stress and to really deal with it. I've got a great team of guys that I work with here in the tech ed department that also, you know, really look out for each other in that realm. So that really helps. But as you said, it's not like a raised or lower level for me. It's just different. I think the time stress, you know, the crunch of like, hurry, get it done. That's all gone. But now I see a side of students that I didn't even see when I was coaching players. You know, it's just a different side where, you know, if you're not ready for it, it can get heavy. So you got to be just ready for it and have some strategies to deal with it.
Laura, anything to add to that? That was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really follow up with what Brian just said, but yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a job that you take home with you. You're constantly thinking about it. You know, you're in the shower, you're walking the dogs, you're gardening. I mean, it's to be able to disconnect is far more difficult than if you are in the shop. However, in the shop, it is a stress of, you know, am I going to make enough hours for my paycheck this week? You know, am I going to be able to pay the bills? Oh, it's pretty slow out there. Oh man, you know, so I think the stress generally is a little bit more long-term, and it's one of those like low stress level things that just kind of can pile up, you know, over time. I mean, there was a time I was driving up 95 to go to work, and I was like, I'm having a lot of trouble breathing. Like, what's wrong with me? You know, and you don't realize that's stress getting you, right? So just be aware of the signs of like, okay, I do actually have a high level of stress. It doesn't seem like it. You may not notice it, but it is there. And you do want to try to manage that as best as possible if you get into teaching.
Dan, I'm curious, out of your perspective, what was it? You didn't have the shop to relate to, but you also had a really long history in a school, and I'm sure there's things that stick with you to this day, right? I mean, there's got to be some of these stories from your career that have either stuck with you or maybe been a really positive or negative memory, and you know, especially when you're dealing with kids. Anything to add to what they were talking about in terms of stressors in a classroom?
Well, I can relate to all those. I remember that stress, although now I'm retired, working part-time at my own schedule, so I'm not sure what stress is anymore. I'm very lucky. But yeah, I mean, when it was, you know, kids, and now from my perspective, I can look back and realize how impactful I was on kids. And that's kind of as I help mentor new teachers and all our teachers, you know, one of the things I think I stressed to Brian and the group last year was like, you have the ability to impact every child in your classroom, and you can impact them to go into this industry. It's not just the ones that, you know, yeah, they're going to be a tech, because I am surprised at how many other students went into automotive that I had no clue. So I was wrong in thinking I knew who was going to this field. And it's so important for teachers today to treat all of them as if they could be potential technicians and encourage them in that thought.
What a mindset. I love that. I love that. Now we're getting close to our hour being up, but one thing that I wanted to end on is talking about industry and the relation from industry to education, right? And Tracy, one thing that I really want to figure out how we do better is how we leverage the relationships when we go from industry into into the classroom, right? So how do we take those relationships that we built while we were in a shop and get them more involved in our programs and help us build stronger programs? You did a really good job at this from what I've heard in terms of being able to interact with the people from industry. How do schools go about doing this maybe better?
You just have to treat your students like a product that companies need. It's a valuable asset that they need, and treat your program like a brand, and try to grow your brand and get it out there. My students, I look at them like, my particular situation. If you would have told me when I was a junior or a senior here in high school in the program here that in 5 years I'd be working for BMW, I would have probably just laughed at you, because the town I grew up in, couldn't recall ever seeing a BMW. And even when I went to school at UTI in Chicago, still not that familiar with, but I did, something clicked for me at the tech school. And I really started to learn and really thrive and do well and stay at the top of my classes. And I got an interview. I took a chance and interviewed with a dealership in Northern Virginia, in Arlington, who had flown all the way to Chicago to interview, students. And he interviewed us, and, I did really well in my interview. My transcript backed up that I was really applying myself out there. And he offered me a job at the BMW dealership, and then sponsoring me through factory training through BMW STEP program. And, I was, he told me he was going to pay me $500 a week, which at that time I was like, dollar signs. Right. I thought I was hit the jackpot. So I was like, I couldn't wait to graduate and go home and go to work. And so I just spent all my time, towards the end of school, learning about the brand and the cars and stuff, because I really wasn't that familiar with it, but I had a direction. So it was a door that opened for me. And what I try to get across to my shops and my PAC members and my industry reps is, these guys are in high school. They have an interest, but they don't really know what they want to do or where they want to work. Some of them are just waiting for that door to pop up and that opportunity to come up, and then they'll just head that direction naturally, and it could turn into, a 30-year technician, a shop foreman, or a service manager down the road. So you'd never really know exactly what student is gonna, step up for what position, but it's just all about presenting opportunities and doors for them. Like what, BMW did for me, BMW of Arlington did for me when I was 18 years old is, they offered me an opportunity. They gave me that opportunity, that door to walk through, and I did it, and it led my career down that path. So the more opportunities, the more doors you can put in front of your students, the better chances they'll have, the better outcomes they'll have. So just mainly just trying to get as much variety and as much opportunities there for them. And they have to, you have to get across them to make time for your program, which is really hard. So we have lots of members, industry members, but some of them just don't put in the time that the others put in. And it's so important. The ones that do put that time in, they habitually come back and get our students, and they have, dozens and dozens of our former students working for them, and it couldn't be happier. They see the talent. Lots of shops drive past other schools to get to our school to come get our students, because they know they're getting a good product. So really just making them aware of what they can and do, and trying to get those students out to those shops so they can see the benefit.
I think you hit a couple really key points there. And I think one of those being that you can tell, I think from a school's perspective, there's a pretty glaring difference from the shops that really care and the shops that say they care and don't, right? And so being able to see that, you can't help but think about that when you're thinking about where a kid might work someday, or where a good opportunity might be for them. And that's for the shops that took the time to listen to this. One, you probably care enough to listen to this, which is great. but two, really get involved, really be a presence in these schools because it is sorely needed. We need to build these programs up. We need to support them in a number of different ways, and that's such a big deal. As we end this, I want to take a second for each of you to maybe offer some advice. And so what I would ask is, what piece of advice would you give to somebody that's currently a technician that is looking to get into education? And Dan, maybe if you don't mind, I can start with you.
Yeah, so I get asked this, and I do tell technicians this, and it's what I referred to before, is I encourage them to find an avenue to work with kids right now. Before you go into that, get that experience, coach, mentor, whatever it takes. But yes, you need that experience, and then make sure you ask for help when you do take it. There's ASE has a great new instructor guide that's available online. Our foundation, we help support teachers with curriculum and assistance and putting it together. So I think there's somebody there to help you, and you don't think you got to do this alone.
Great advice. Brian?
Well, sticking true to the case, Dan stole my second one there. Well done. I can't say that enough. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know what I mean? There's so many people that were willing to offer me help, that helped me out tremendously in every step that I took to get here. You know what I mean? And to getting my licensure. I had a whole district office working like around the clock to get my licensure. And then I got ready to step foot in the classroom. And Dan and the wonderful people at Watt, I had a whole curriculum laid out for me and everything like that. So really, it was all plug and play when I first started this, to get my feet wet, to figure out who I was as a teacher. That was absolutely invaluable. And then I share an office with three very experienced, very incredible teachers. So if you do get it, if you decide to go for this, find a mentor, either assign yourself to somebody or put yourself out there, or have one assigned to you. Somebody who's been through this, who knows kind of the curriculum side of things and knows how to handle these situations and all that sort of stuff. It's been invaluable to me, and there's no way I succeed without that sort of help.
Laura?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So generally speaking, I do have a couple students that come to me who are interested in getting positions as a teacher. And so if this is a student that I sort of already know, and I think, yeah, they've got the stuff, they've got the right things to get going, apply everywhere, right? Sometimes they just kind of pigeonhole themselves to the school that they came from or the college they went to, whatever the case may be. But you might want to search, a little bit farther out in a different county even, and that's okay, right? But definitely be ready with good references, because we're going to rely really, really heavily on those references. And generally speaking, for us, we have full-time faculty and adjunct faculty. If I see someone who's only interested, just kind of like Dan was referring to earlier, only interested in a full-time position, I'm like, no, you have to be an adjunct first. You got to do the part-time work. I want to make sure that this is something that you want. Show me that this is something you really desire, because it is very easy to have a program, shut down if they can't keep an instructor. It's very easy for us as a community college with multiple instructors to lose that position for a long period of time, maybe even permanently. So it is, keep in mind, on the part of the school, a really big risk for them to put out a full-time faculty position. So bring your A game when you go to apply, right? Don't take it casually. This is not a hiring process like they have at shops where you walk in and you get a job the same day. You're going to be going through like 3 separate interviews with maybe even a board with like 12 people in front of you, okay? And you're going to have to do it, probably a teaching demonstration. So practice.
Have your ducks in a row.
Yes, practice in front of people. So you get used to doing that, because there's nothing more difficult than giving a teaching demonstration or presentation to people. And when you get there, just remember that you will be the most nervous you've ever been in your whole life that first day when you walk into the classroom and you're like, I've got to teach these students something. And that's okay. That is normal. It gets a little bit easier each semester, but you'll always kind of have that. So it's all right. Don't worry.
That is great, great stuff. Tracy, I'll end with you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what everyone said. Dan, said, work with students, get involved in a mentorship program, judge a contest, a local skills contest, or whatever your community uses. What Laura said, substitute, right? Get on the list, substitute, right? Get it, and not just once. Get in there, see what the students act like, see what a day in the life of an automotive teacher is like, more than once, because the first time is not even going to be like real life. It's going to be like a vacation probably. But get in front, get in there and participate. Get on the advisory council so you can meet the people that you're going to interact with. That's when I was offered the opportunity to apply. I didn't even know the other instructor was retiring. I was at a PAC meeting talking to industry members, and the CTE director said, you got an application in? And I was like, nope. He said, all right, well, get to work on that. So, and that's mentoring, get in there, substitute, interact, and make sure it's the right fit for you. And just basically be involved. And then just, and then maybe think back to some technician or some mentor you had in your career that made a difference for you, and remember how valuable that was for you, and just focus on the fact that you could be that person for hundreds of kids, young men and young women in the industry, that you could be that person that catapulted their career or made a difference for their future.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure to sit with the four of you. All four of you have had an immense impact on the industry, and something that I really enjoy following, because I think without you, there are no technicians, right? There's whatever problems we have right now are magnified times a million if we don't have you. So I do genuinely appreciate each of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to sit on the panel today and talk about this. I learned a lot, and I really, really genuinely appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Jay. It's a pleasure meeting everyone.